for a business, what matters to you is where your customers live, where your employees live, and what is that experience for them getting to and from your business? What does it mean to grow and respond to the changing needs of your employees and your customers? Companies in Maplewood can use census data to inform business decisions. There's a lot of information to consider. You have a really interesting geography. You usually see those weird geographies when it comes to annexations. If I was a company considering Maplewood, or if I was a consultant helping a company considering Maplewood, and I saw that, I would not want to just look at the workforce characteristics of that. Because I know immediately that the folks who are working in Maplewood do not only live in that area, but I still think it's important to understand the characteristics of the people who do live in that area. Certainly for you, you want to know the characteristics of the people in that area. But when it comes to understanding people who work here and trying to attract workers here, or helping a company understand the workforce that they can access by being located here, you want to look at a bigger area. And that's when we talk about drive time areas, so that's like that commuting area. So folks are, for the most part, we've learned, willing to travel about 30 minutes to get to work. Obviously, many people are on the bottom and the top of that, but generally that's about the travel time people feel comfortable with. And so I like to look at a 30-minute drive time of a location to understand the workforce characteristics. So I'm going to show you what a 30-minute drive time of Maplewood looks like, and I think you'll be pretty surprised of how big that area is. And I'm going to do a 30-minute drive time. And we're able to do this because the technology now can take traffic patterns, speed limits, road networks, and decide through the tech what that area looks like. But we are going everywhere from as west as Maple Grove, as north as over Forest Lake, east past Hudson, and well within to Wisconsin, and south down to Rosemont. So pretty big draw area for folks that would be willing to work in Maplewood. And we can look at commuting patterns too, so I can actually look at commuting patterns for you, or you can too. It's accessible through Census to see how many of the people who work in Maplewood, where they're actually coming from, like what counties and cities that they're coming from, and for people who live in Maplewood, where they're going to work. So that is data that is also available. Okay, so let's go back to City of Maplewood, and let me show you these tapestry segmentations, because I think they're super interesting. First, let's quickly just run through a profile of Maplewood. 2000 population was about 35,000. In 2019, the estimated population reached over 40,000. So we saw growth, which is great. In looking at the time series, growth in Maplewood's been super consistent, like 0.8% annual growth over the last 10 years. Has not deviated. The regional story is the Maplewood story when it comes to population growth. So I think that's a good thing. No major spikes. Now we can look at the number of households, which is a little bit different, and then you see a little bit more variation. When you think about a household, right, that's like who's actually living in a particular house. And we get that from the census, which is super important. We get an understanding of household size. We get a look at housing units. In 2019, about 70% owner occupied. I mean, that's a healthy mix of owner renter. And we've seen shifts in what this means. It used to mean a lot to have really high home ownership rates. I think it means a little bit less now. But still a good measure to track for over time for the city. Median age, this is really important, all right? Because this is about services, this is about housing, this is about all kinds of things. We talk about how our population is aging. So in 2010, the median age in the city of Maplewood was 39.3 years. In 2019, it is 40.1. And in 2024, it is projected to go up a little bit more to 40.9. We're getting older. That is not super old. I mean, that it could be higher. I think you think about like a city that's like a young city. I'd say like San Antonio. Most Texas cities are pretty young, just in their median age. You'll see maybe like a 32 or 33. Minneapolis, St. Paul overall is like 38, 37, 38. So city of Maplewood's a little bit older than the metro overall and getting a little bit older. So I think about that, obviously, when you think about how you are preparing for your population and what their needs are going to be, but also for thinking about them as customers, what services, products they're going to be interested in as they age, and probably their housing is aging, right? Or they're looking for new types of housing. So now we're seeing some shifts in senior housing, folks getting ready to sell their home if the economy does not completely crash, getting ready to sell their home and downsize. I've been surprised by how many people want to downsize in place here. As an outsider, I expected, that there's like a exodus, upon retirement. But people want to stay here. They want to be near their families, and they want options to live here. And maybe that doesn't mean the single-family home that they've had for the last 30 years. Race, this is the other thing I want to point out. As a region, we're getting more diverse. The 15 and under population for the metro area is majority minority for the first time. So 15 and under, primarily population of color. So we have to prepare for that, right? Like, that's a good thing. Diversity is good, but that changes the way we think about, it should change the way we think about how our population is growing and how we're responding to their needs. So for Maplewood, we're at about 67% white, and that has gone down from 10 years ago. And so you are becoming more diverse here in Maplewood. Esri has this thing called a diversity index, and it is supposed to help us understand how diverse we are compared to the US overall. And so the diversity index for City of Maplewood is 58. That is less diverse than the nation overall. The nation is like 65. So the nation isn't 100. If you think about like the US being the average, being 100, that's not exactly how this works. But what it's trying to show us is the likelihood that you walking down the street will interact with somebody that looks different than you. This is saying we're less likely to run into somebody that looks different than us here in Maplewood than the US overall is likely to see somebody that looks different from them walking down the street. So hopefully that makes sense. But I think the point here is that the city of Maplewood is becoming more diverse. And then when you look out to 2024, that's going to continue. I mean, it's showing the white population going down to 61.5%. It looks like the largest is the Asian population after white. We can look at educational attainment. 20% of the population has a bachelor's degree, and 13 have a graduate or higher professional degree. So 33.5% bachelor's or higher. That's pretty good. The metro overall is about 40%, so it is lower than the metro overall, but it's not bad. It's pretty good. When you add in associate's degree, so you're talking about post-secondary education or higher, that's really the thing employers care about. There's some extra education that happened after high school. We've gotten to the point now where having just a high school degree may not get you in the door for all jobs. There needs to be some extra credential or certificate that you've acquired. Now that may change, that may continue to change as we talk about this upskilling requirement, but we like to track associates or higher. Occupations, so we're about 65% white collar to 18% blue collar. So I usually look at this data from another angle where we can clearly define if it's the population that lives here but works elsewhere versus employers who are located here. So I don't want to tell you one way or the other, because I could say quickly, oh, 3M, that's why, because that's really high. I mean, that's a really high percentage for management, business, professional occupations. versus, well, you can see what falls within blue collar. So it's construction, production, transportation, logistics, material moving, distribution centers, warehousing. This isn't like a major finding. I mean, I think this is pretty typical for a suburban community like Maplewood. Let's look at these tapestry things, because I think they're funny, but they're really informative. Number one for the city of Maplewood, I'll give you the top 5. We'll name the names and then we'll go and check them out a little bit. So number 1 is Parks and Rec. Almost 21% of folks, of households here in Maplewood fall into this category of Parks and Rec. Let's see what that means. Gen X urban, interesting, Gen X urban. All right, so we know Gen X, Gen X urban. Okay, so folks, who are we? These are practical suburbanites who have achieved the dream of home ownership. Yes, they got there. They've purchased homes. Their homes are older. Townhomes and duplexes are not uncommon. Many of these families are 2-income married couples approaching retirement. They are comfortable in their jobs and their homes. They budget wisely, but they do not plan on retiring anytime soon or moving. They're happy. Neighborhoods are well established, as well as the amenities and programs that support their now independent children through school and college. The appeal of these kid-friendly neighborhoods is now attracting a new generation of young couples. So more than half of this population is college educated. Let's see, the workforce is diverse. It's a financially shrewd market. Consumers are careful to research their big ticket purchases. When planning trips, they search for discounted airlines. So a lot of this language is about how do you target this population as a company. So the language is written a little bit that way. But there's a lot of data here. And I think, so here we see the median age. Yep, that's about right, about 40. Diversity index, Maplewood falls right here. So this is a profile of Parks and Rec throughout the country. So this isn't just to Maplewood, but you can see why Maplewood has fallen in this category. Budget conscious, they like to watch documentaries on Animal Planet, Discovery, or the History Channel. They like to dine out at family-style restaurants. So all kinds of just fun Maplewood. All right, let's look quickly at like the number 2, because it's not just one. Now this one showed up the highest. I think that, looking at the full picture is good. Number 2, comfortable empty nesters. Number 3, old and newcomers, okay. 4, midlife constants. And number 5, bright young professionals. All right. Number 6 was soccer moms. We got down the road, front porches, savvy suburbanites. I really love that practical suburbanites. That's it says a lot, doesn't it? Like, it speaks to it. They have these life mode groups, and then within each life mode group, it characterizes by the name that I just talked about. So like I mentioned laptops and lattes, that falls under the life mode group uptown individuals. We just talked about Parks and Rec, that fell into Gen X urban. So you've got a couple Gen X urbans. I'd say Maplewood is Gen X urban for sure. So comfortable empty nesters, I'll just give you the quick on them. Residents in this large growing segment are older, with nearly half of all householders aged 55 or older. Many still live in the suburbs where they grew up. Most are professionals working in government, healthcare, or manufacturing. These baby boomers are earning a comfortable living and benefiting from years of prudent investing and saving. They're practical. Their net worth is well above average. Many are enjoying the transition from child rearing to retirement. They value their health and financial well-being. So I think this is like a pretty good kind of group to have. They've got money, they've saved well. They want to spend their money, probably. They're going to do their research, but they want to spend their money now that they have more free time when they're not watching Animal Planet. I do just want to point out quickly, census is happening. All of this is because of the census and the data that we provide to the census. And we have a count happening this year. St. Paul Area Chamber and Greater MSP have been involved with Ramsey County and the City of St. Paul with getting the complete count here. And we're really doing all that we can to make sure employers understand how it's important in developing data that informs this kind of information. So if you haven't yet, St. Paul Area Chamber has a pledge for your employer to provide time to fill out your census. Yes, perfect. Yep, so is Greater MSP. So yeah, so there's my plug. All right, any questions? So the question, what kind of background to get a job like this? So I was a undergrad geography and economics, which now makes a lot of sense. At the time, it did not. And I was one of those that just found economic development right out of college. I was in Georgia at the time. I grew up in Michigan, but my husband is from, it was in the Army, so we moved around a bit. Through that experience, I learned a lot about, obviously, economic development, but then moving to site selection, what motivates companies to make location decisions. And you learn over the years the data that's available to inform those decisions, and it's incredible what is available now. It's like even 10 years ago, we didn't have any of this. And so we just have so much now information. Now it's like, how do we condense and make it interesting and informative and understandable? And that's the real job. And that's why things like this are so helpful, because they make a lot of data, understandable and relatable.